Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. To volunteer for opening prayer.
Thank you.
You going to do the opening prayer, Muslim?
Thank you. See you then tomorrow.
I can't quite hear you.
He said see you tomorrow, but I don't think he can.
I took it away.
Oh yeah, I know. You did take them off. I see. So you want to do the opening prayer?
Me? Sure.
Pardon me?
Okay. Let us close our eyes. And we give utmost gratitude for all of the love and blessings and teachings that our divine Heavenly Father provides for us ongoing, along with all of our guides, spirit guides, both incarnate and discarnate. And we ask for the blessings of Teresa to be able to continue the teachings, for us understanding to the best of our ability, and be able to receive what it is that we need to know, be, do, and have during this session. And we give thanks and invite all of our discarnate friends to also be able to learn. And we ask for the blessing and permission to begin our class for this evening. And so be it.
And so it is.
Yeah.
Again, thank you, everybody, and welcome to Becerra Spiritual Healing Inner Transformation as we welcome our dear sister, Teresa Castro.
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful prayer, and thank you for inviting me to share on this lesson 4, which is about meekness and patience without anger and using silence. So we're going to align the virtue of meekness with Ben Franklin's one of his 13 virtues, the virtue of silence. And so I believe I do the screen share. Is that right? Okay. So here we go, inner transformation. This is lesson 4, and these slides and this information has been coordinated, put together, compiled by the United States Spiritist Federation. So what we first find out is that meekness, it's tough to find a good definition, that it often gets related as meaning weakness or timid, and docile is kind of in a negative viewpoint. And we're told that Jesus, while retaining its reference to human beings, lifted it from its narrow context and made it refer primarily to our relations with God. So some have tried to use humility as the equivalent of meekness, but it's not, they're not really one and the same. They're synonymous, but there is some difference with them. And also gentleness is another word that they try to kind of use to describe meekness. And there again, it's not meekness in its fullness, because meekness is much more involved. So then we see that Jesus says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And when Jesus introduces this maxim, he combines gentleness, moderation, docility, affability, patience as attributes of the law. Consequently, he condemns violence, anger, and even any discourteous expression regarding another person. And so that's found out of the Gospel, chapter 9, item 4. And then we learn that Jesus was not the first to state the importance of meekness, but he was the first to collect in what we call the Beatitudes. And we'll remember that the Beatitudes is an organized list of the characteristics of the perfect human being. So I recently on a study, someone asked, how would I know if I was aligned with God's laws or something to that effect? And the speaker said, you could, a place to look is the Beatitudes. Compare yourself against the virtues that are presented in the Beatitudes. So Emmett Fox, he is actually, he was a scientist, a philosopher, and a spiritual teacher. And he wrote the book, The Sermon on the Mount. And he was really known for tapping into the realm of infinite power that surrounds us. He helped a lot of people gain control over their lives. And he states that this beatitude, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, is among the half dozen most important verses in the Bible. Also, it was noted that this is the most famous beatitude. I'm not sure what is meant by most famous, like the majority of the people remember this one, or I don't know how that came to be decided, but that was a statement. So let's see here. I wanted to talk a little bit about Emmett Fox because I think he had a lot to share with us. And just let me see, because I think this goes on to, that kind of goes on to a different topic. So he said, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Well, he's talking about this in his book. Jesus is the one who actually said it. And he brings out a point that he says that meek and earth are two polar words that are used. And he says that earth represents our outer experiences. So anything that we experience in life, that is, the earth is like symbolic for that. And that meekness is mastery over our outer experiences. So what he feels is coming out of this beatitude is to be masters of our own destinies. And in order to do that, we do need to use our free will, to bring conditions into harmony. So I thought that was very interesting, the way that he said that meekness and earth were kind of symbolic. And he also stated that Jesus's teachings are true, that they're the most practical doctrine. Therefore, he referred to them as the key of life. And then you might be asking, well, how do we become masters of our own destinies? How do we do it? And he says through meekness, because he says that meekness is a mental attitude. It's a combination of open-mindedness, faith, and the allowance of God's will. He said that this is the key to success in demonstration. So even not so much how you think or how you feel, but how you behave. And another interesting thing that he presented in this Sermon on the Mount, which you guys may have heard this, because I think this book was used for another lecture on inner transformation. But he said that Moses was a great example of meekness. And I didn't know this about Moses, that Moses lived to be 120 years old, and that Moses, he said, dematerialized, that he didn't die, he just dematerialized. And I thought that was quite interesting. I had never heard that. So showing that Moses had a good control or mastery over his outer world. And he really knew the power of the spoken word in calling forth the scientific faith. So he said that Moses he understood conforming oneself rigorously to the will of God. And he didn't see this as self-sacrifice, but he saw it as true self-glorification. And in the sense that God is in me, I am in the Father. I am in God, and God is in me. The Father in me does the work, I in God, and God is in me. So I thought that was a beautiful thing too. It wasn't that he felt, he was giving of himself or sacrificing. He saw it as an opportunity to like glorify God, right? And isn't that one of the things we can do in prayer? So they say the reason that Moses is an example of meekness is because he had an open mind. He was ready to be taught new ways of thinking, and he didn't reject fresh revelation because it wasn't mainstream, right? Many of us will just, because it's not accepted by the majority, we throw it out or we discard it. And Moses was not that way. And then lastly, he just adds that there's an Asian saying that says, meekness compels God himself. So I really like this, that Emmett Fox shows us that this is a mental attitude. And he talks about, he goes back to the fact that all causes have a mental, they all come from a mental state. So I thought that was really interesting because we learn in the Kabbalion that the universe is mental, and that, so it kind of went hand in hand with that. I thought that was very interesting. So let us move on. So we should recognize that when Jesus presents meekness as a highly desirable quality, he prefaces it with, blessed are the poor in spirit, and blessed are those who mourn. So those are other beatitudes that come before, blessed are the meek, and it comes after. He places it within a context that contains qualities which are similar to meekness. But being poor in spirit and mourning are both internal operations, and meekness is both internal and external in its execution in one's life. So that's why I think it's hard to come up with a clear-cut definition for the word. And then obviously the world's idea of the perfect individual is very different from that of Jesus. So we often think that blessed are the strong who can hold their own, because we think of weak people who are meek as being incapable or incompetent or unable. And so we're really being invited here to change our mindset. And because we find that people who are strongly, or very independent, self-sufficient, there can also be a streak of competitiveness, aggressiveness, and assertiveness. And they're often the ones that are getting these awards, when you look at kind of, sports. Yeah. So oftentimes it's associated with these characteristics that are not really hand in hand with meekness. Okay. So why does Jesus say that those who are meek will inherit the earth, when he also says that one should renounce the things of the world? And so the answer is quite simple, because on earth we have the opportunity for growing spiritually and advancing toward God. So we could achieve this state more easily if we didn't have to struggle with adversity and contradictory emotions on a daily basis. So yeah, so the world is a place where we can evolve, we can atone, we can expiate, we can progress, but we really don't want to become attached to the world. We want to realize that we are a spirit. So we are not a body with a spirit, but we are a spirit having human condition. When the law of love and charity is finally the law of humankind, there will be no more selfishness, and the gentle and peace-loving will no longer be exploited or crushed by the strong and aggressive. So we know that we are in the throes of that the world is transforming. It says, such will be the state of the earth when, according to the law of progress and the promise of Jesus, it becomes a blessed world through the expulsion of evil individuals. And we primarily know that this is going to happen as we change ourselves. So it's not like we're going to wake up one morning on this new and improved world. Nope, it's going to new and improve as we new and improve, as we change, as we make different choices. Okay. So meekness, patience, and silence without anger. Patience is the virtue that enables us silently to submit, not because we are either placid or indifferent, but because we have learned to seek further consolations beyond the boundaries of the present that render the tribulations of this life secondary and futile. So in short, patience is knowing how to wait. And it's doing this through the heart. So it's not about enduring, oh, I'll just put up with this, but it's knowing that it's the right thing to do. All right, hold on one moment. All right.
You know, that's a tough one to learn too, is patience.
Mm-hmm.
And we constantly are challenged with patience every day, even at a stoplight. You know what I'm saying? You could be at a stop. Will you come on? Or even a stop sign, and somebody goes to sleep on their phone, you know, and you don't know what they're doing in that car, but it isn't moving. I mean, I'm caught like that all the time. And sometimes I'm at a stop sign and I just don't just sit there. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just blank out. Somebody will toot their horn. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm waiting for a light or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have to be on my phone. But yeah, many times I've gotten behind people, and because of my behavior, I have more patience with the other car.
Mm-hmm.
I am
Right.
the same, Gina, except I keep waiting for the stop sign to turn green.
I think a lot of it is taming our emotions, right? Is, you know, just kind of keeping them in check and not letting them run the show.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, we just live in a society that's fast paced.
Mm.
So you have to keep up or something's wrong with you. Anyway, that's how I feel. So
Yeah. So we should at all costs be constantly on guard against anger. If you are patient in one moment of anger, you will escape 100 days of sorrow. So, you know, they say if you can temper your anger, you can use anger to teach, that it can be something that motivates, you know, to help others. But when it's, you know, fiery and really explosive, it's destructive. So it's not helpful.
I agree. I had a teaching moment with one of my nieces who was very, very angry last weekend because she was tired.
Mm,
And I got to show her what it looked like when she asked me to pick her up from the mall. When I picked her up, she said, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Nothing." Well, but what's wrong with you? You know, because I wasn't all bubbly like normal. I said, "Nothing's wrong with me." I said, "It doesn't feel good when somebody does this to you, does it?" She said, "No." I said, "Well, imagine how we felt with your anger on Sunday. You were just completely angry. And if we didn't do it."
mm,
Well, I was tired. I said, "We understand that, but you showed us nothing but anger, and it didn't feel good, and we didn't do it to you."
mm.
That's all I'm saying. And she got it.
Yeah.
just because I displayed what she did, you know. Teaching
Yeah,
moment.
and not in an angry way. You didn't criticize her. You didn't tell her what she should do. Yeah.
No,
So,
I didn't. You're
right.
absolutely right.
Yeah,
Anytime they open the door, I try to use a teaching moment to help them move forward or take a look at the scenario or whatever it is.
right. Because the minute we criticize, we you know, criticism undoes love. So the
Right,
minute we
right, right.
criticize, you know, even with our best intentions, it's, you know, we're not going to achieve what we may, you know, we're probably setting out for. Thank you for sharing that. Those are I think those are really important moments, these live practical things that happen to us, these real things. You know, we can talk about the theoretical and these kind of mental, you know, we can kind of philosophize about a lot of this stuff for hours, but I think that's where it's really at, is when we talk about in our daily lives and how it
Yeah.
shows up and how we practice it.
That hands-on.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So now we get to the Ben Franklin and the 13 virtues, and we're looking at the virtue of silence. So the wise advice of Benjamin Franklin, and I don't know that Franklin's name was spelled with a Y. Is that right? I don't think so. Is that
So,
right? I never noticed that. Yeah. So speak not, but what may benefit others or yourself, avoiding trifling conversation. And we can look at trifling here to mean unnecessary, just, you know, kind of words flying around in the air, you know, superficial kind of talk. And then we hear from Abe Lincoln, who says, better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt. I love that. Very wise saying. Okay, so the meek person remains cool when others become heated. They know that God's justice prevails always. They seek to remain true to their calling and meet God's standards. So the good return for evil disarms the enemy. That's a good, powerful, powerful statement for us to remember. When we return good for bad, it disarms them. It's hard for us to think about in the moment when someone's really shooting some darts at us, or, you know, we're getting really triggered. It's hard to think about this one. But it's a good reminder, right? Is if the moment we return good for evil, it's going to disarm that enemy. So one's hatred is converted into surprise because nobody expects you to do that, and into admiration by awakening one's solemn conscience. This lesson may produce a deep impression upon the individual. Thus, we may say, through enlightenment, save a soul from perversity. And so we can only do that if we can get out of ourselves, right? If we're too much into, you offended me, you said this, you should have done that, we can't get beyond it. Right. So it's like we got to make a choice to kind of raise ourselves up higher and not make it be about us or them, but about harmony. And that's what I think meekness is bringing to us. So when should we be silent? There is a very interesting article entitled, Are You Sharp-Tongued? That proposes the question, must the truth hurt? And when I saw this, it reminded me of our lecture, the study we had this past Sunday with Anna Moreno. And, you know, asking ourselves that question, is it true? Can I say it kindly? Does it need to be said? And am I the person to say it? So it's kind of, you know, running through those questions, and deciding and making some decisions, discerning about that. Because some of these things are just really excuses. Honesty is the best policy, or I'm only being honest. Well, what we know is honesty without love is brutality. Okay. The truth hurts. Wrong is wrong and it must be corrected. according to who? Who said so? You know, I've been through a lot, so it comes out when I express myself. And just like your niece, Gina, you know, I was tired, right? So it's okay for me to make other people miserable. It's just my sense of humor. Don't take it seriously. And unfortunately, each of these excuses is probably familiar, right? We've said that or heard other people say it at some time or another. And so usually we spend a great deal of time talking about things that are really meaningless, like this picture, blah, 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 blah. And so we spend unnecessary energy, and we also connect ourselves to a level of energy that is very low, right? So what kind of spirits are we attracting? And so one of the things we can do during those times when we catch ourselves, like, you know, I'm just talking garbage here, or I'm just talking, you know, unimportant. Let me just take that pause and kind of recenter, reconnect with my center, with my inner self, and just take the pause.
Teresa,
Yes.
I'd like to expand our consciousness on this concept.
Sure.
This principle right here about trifling conversation not only applies to human,
Mm-hmm.
it can also apply human to device. So you think about the amount of hours that can be spent holding your phone up and letting whatever news feed or fun feed or whatever absorb your mind. Trivial.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that's you, Mark.
really,
Oh, maybe not. Oh, okay.
anyway, just again, broaden the consciousness.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I think they should add that to these slides.
It's like humans talking to me through my phone, you know, through my tablet, whatever.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, you know, what I wanted to say here that I think I forgot was, you know, so it also goes back to, it's not only what we say, but how we say it.
Always.
You know, so, you know, there's something about saying, well, it's just my sense of humor. You know, I didn't really mean it, instead of, you know, we can come off our tone. Yeah, the tone can make a difference too with what we
Body
say.
language does too.
Oh yeah, very good. Good point. Absolutely. Body language is huge, sometimes even more so, because we can refrain, we can hold our tongue, but then we let it out in the eyes and, you know, yeah, the non-contact. We give the people the cold shoulder. Yeah, big time. Thank you for saying that. And then here comes Emily Dickinson, who says that saying nothing sometimes says the most. Yeah, so I guess it depends. What is it that you want to say there?
There's
Okay.
also this saying that goes, silence is a form of consent.
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
Do you want to expound on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, I've in the years that I've been doing what I do, and also just with my own family, even when you don't respond or say anything, you're right. All this what we're talking about makes sense. But then also it's like, well, I know you hear that with kids, especially teenagers. Well, you didn't say anything, so I just thought that you meant yes. Or there was no response, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't. So if I'm asking you a question and I'm expecting to hear the answer to be a yes, because it's in my favor, then you know, you don't say anything. So, oh well, I just want to, you know, assume that it was a yes because you didn't say anything to me. You didn't say no. You didn't go against it. So
Right.
that's the rationale behind it. Whether I agree with it or not, I don't think that I do.
Yeah.
So
No, I hear this all the time when I have new patients come and they're newly out of surgery or whatever. And I say, and have you been cleared to drive? And they always, many of them say, oh, I didn't even discuss that with the doctor. And
just
obviously
assumed.
why? Because they don't want to hear the answer
Yeah,
no.
and you're right. I just
Yeah.
assumed. That's the
Yeah.
bottom line is I just assumed they didn't tell me no.
Right.
So,
It was
and you
really
know that,
poor communication, yeah.
well, and I think that's the easy way out to get what you want.
Mhm.
I mean, just, well, you didn't tell me no, so, or I didn't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of behaviors and things we do to get what we want
Right.
when it's convenient.
And there comes the slogan, it's sometimes better to apologize than to ask
Uh-huh.
permission. You know?
Yeah,
So that one
that's
kind of
very
follows
true.
it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's interesting. This slide I have seen before, and the dialogue y'all were just having helped me to remember where. I saw a presentation on things trial lawyers will use as their principles for conduct. And this one in particular, the most experienced trial lawyers, when they realize they've got a witness that is the key witness for a key piece of testimony or evidence, they will lead that witness through a series of questions. And the zinger question never gets asked. The question before it is done in such a way that the person on the stand answers it, and the lawyer says, "Really?" and walks away like, "Thank you," you know.
Mhm. Mm.
Mhm. They're very
Okay.
clever.
Yes. All right, so where are we here? So silence. We need to learn when it seems necessary to reprimand with kindness, to discuss without heat, to judge all things with benevolence and moderation. Our focus should always be on solving the problem, not just talking about it, condemning it, or gossiping about it. So I don't know. To me, is is it really necessary to reprimand at all? Even if it is with kindness? I kind of question that. I mean,
I want to.
this is so many situations that, I guess a
Exactly.
child would be different than an adult.
Yeah, that's what I was
Sorry.
going to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's use tonight as an example. If one of us were to, well,
That's you, Mark.
if one of us were to be, well, that's weird. I got nothing.
Is it maybe because you're
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Is it Wilson?
If one of us were to object to something you said, but did not want to make it an open objection, then we have the opportunity to communicate with you specifically one-on-one afterwards. It could be relative to the content, it could be relative to your style of presentation, whatever the case may be. How would I communicate that? When would I communicate that? Well, only when necessary. Who am I to judge and critique you? But on the other hand, as an educator, as a spiritist, we are here to strengthen each other. So if there were something beneficial to share with you privately, how something could have been said differently, better, whatever, then I would call upon what I've been doing for 30 years as a Toastmaster, and we call them evaluations. It's the same criteria that Spiritism speaks about. Is it kind? Is it beneficial? Is it not full of your individual ego? And so on. And it has to be presented in a way that the recipient of that kind of feedback, that kind of evaluation, is receiving it in the most positive manner to make them better and know that it came from the heart, not from the sword.
Right. So you probably would ask the question, would you like some feedback?
Would you mind me giving you some feedback?
Well, and I think also, I think the polite way also is to clarify so that I can understand. So what you said may not be how it landed on me. So in order for me to clarify what you're trying to tell me, you don't have to agree or disagree with it. It just is what it is. And I think that is the most gentle way, because even if you ask for feedback, you might not agree with it.
And it is very circumstantial. And Teresa, I'll ask you to reflect on when we were first starting the study of the Kabbalion, how so much of it was initially confusing to us. Took us a while to get the rhythm, and how we kind of questioned each other about how to present the information, and then we just kept rolling. You know, we were so committed to it.
Well, you know, there's sometimes there's a rule that, well, you can play dumb and say, you know, well, I didn't get it or I didn't understand for several reasons. Is that, you know, you can think what you want because I want to manipulate it, or you can also get the opportunity just to not conflict, to move on, whatever it might be that you want to get out of or not out of the conversation. If that makes sense.
It does.
I'm wondering, Mark, can you mute everybody and then people unmute as they want to talk? Because I think this is part of the problem.
Probably.
I'm just assuming since you're the host, maybe you can mute everybody.
We just have.
Move side, mute. You can just, there he goes. He did it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Didn't realize
Okay,
it was
well,
that easy.
thank you. So Mark, we'll have to talk about that more.
Well, again, I'm
Because I have a feeling you're trying to be kind.
no, just the opposite. I'm absolutely paying attention to this strategy of silence. And you know, the key word here is necessary. Who am I to judge it's necessary? Judge at the moment, it's necessary for me to give you this feedback.
Mhm.
Wait a minute. I'm a rookie at this stuff, you know. So I wouldn't necessarily jump right into it, the opportunity, even though in other forums I might.
Yeah. So I think it's a part of meekness and it's not saying that I'm a pushover, but it's like, it's in this support of nonviolence, of harmony, of promoting harmony. And so, but that we need, I think as a humankind, we need to come to understand that, because we still think of it as you're a pushover, people take advantage of you, you're, you know, quiet, you're not strong, you don't stand out, you don't, you know, no, you're not heard kind of thing.
I think, like you
So-
said earlier, it could be a sign of weakness.
You know, there's a
Yeah, and this is what this whole thing is talking about, that it's mistranslated.
there's
Weakness is not this.
something just hit me in this, and that is the factor of the ego, I guess. It's not up to me to own the moment. It's not up to me to own the moment. You know, I have an opportunity to contribute to the moment, but I don't own it. It's not my responsibility.
Hmm,
You know,
good way of looking at it.
yeah.
Yeah. Because we do kind of get very selfish in that way, like it's everything's ours.
Well, especially when we become passionate about a key point.
Yeah.
There's always room to learn.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then moving along. So get as few people involved in the, so they're giving us some ideas about we need to learn when it seems necessary. So they're giving us some tips, and they're saying get as few people involved in the matter as possible. So we don't go around, hey, did you hear about this? Did you know about that? In fact, no one else needs to know about it unless it escalates. Concentrate on the matter at hand and do not bring up past grievances. I think what they're talking about is if you're going to go to your brother, and it is true, there is the one passage in the New Testament where Jesus says, you know, if you have something against your brother, go to him one-on-one and try to resolve it. If he listens to you, then you've won over a friend or a brother or something. So even Jesus made that recommendation. So do not burn any bridges or threaten the other person with ultimatums. Remember that we are not trying to lose, but to gain our brother or sister. And I think that's the big key here, because oftentimes when we want to confront, because that's really kind of what we're doing, it's often we want to be right. And so this idea of gaining a brother or sister gets lost. It's about, we want to be right. We want to be the winner. So Jesus is blunt with sin, but kind and patient with sinners. So he was really able to separate the crime from the criminal from the crime, whatever. But you know, he was never supportive of wrongdoing. I mean, never did he once support it in any way, shape, or form. So silence, a mind fed by godly wisdom, will be better able to follow this advice and control the most wild of all members, which is our tongue. As we grow in that great wisdom, our words become fresh and reliable. We lose the sharp edge from our tongues. So, you know, as we improve ourselves, we are better able to practice silence because we don't have anything to prove. And we realize, you know, there's a higher law in effect here. It's not just what we think or what we want. It's not about our agenda any longer.
Sometimes pick your battle, right?
Yeah. So here they're going to give us a story about the tongue. So Aesop was an African slave and storyteller who lived in ancient Greece between 620 and 560 BC. His fables are some of the most well-known in the world. Once Xanthus, a philosopher, asked Aesop, his slave, to bring him the best meat from the market. Aesop brought him a tongue. When questioned by Xanthus about his choice, Aesop replied, "But I would like you to tell me what is better or sweeter than tongue, because certainly every doctrine and every art and philosophy is established and ordered by tongue. By tongues do men exalt themselves. You will find nothing more salutary than has been given by the immortals to mortals than the tongue." So I think it's reminding us we can use our tongue for good or bad. And the tongue has been responsible for a lot of chaos in the world, but also for a lot of help as well. Let's see here. And I think I said this the other night. There is some Christians, when they say their signing of their cross, they say something about save us from our enemies. And I asked them why like that over the mouth. And they said, because our biggest enemy is our tongue, or can be our biggest enemy, which I think is very true. We use sometimes our words carelessly. They can be hurtful. And, you know, I actually had this experience the other day, you know, when Chico says, it's better that I am offended than if I offend somebody else. And I always thought, well, isn't that beautiful? But I could never really find myself feeling that way. Well, I was sitting in my office at work, and I could hear another therapist talking about me in the business office that was down the hall. And in the past, I would have been, you know, right in there defending myself. What are you saying about me? But I really had that statement of Chico come over me, that I really thought, you know what? It's better that she's doing that about me, whatever she's saying, than me in there saying that about her. I really felt that experience. It was really beautiful. And I never asked her what was she saying about, I've never, like, I just let it go and kept moving. So, and that's like a real first for me, because usually I hear my name and I'm on it. So let's see, I think he tells us here that Oh, okay, here we go. So the next day,
Teresa,
Yeah.
quick story. I've often wondered if this is an Italian from the old country truth. When the family would sit down, father was usually one of the first to have sat down at the table. Kids then followed. If the mother sat down and did the cross over her lips, the kids knew to minimize conversation.
oh, interesting. Yeah.
My mother said that's what happened at her family with her brothers and sisters.
Hmm. I know in the
Exhibit.
Catholics, sometimes they say, in my mind,
Yeah. The
in
sign of
my
the cross on the
thoughts,
forehead
or
is
in my
tongue.
words, and in my heart. But
Mhm.
anyway, yeah. So anyway, the moral of this story is he serves tongue when the master wants the best piece or the most stinking piece. He gives him tongue. And he's just saying that because tongue, men have come into poverty, by the tongue cities are destroyed, all evil comes from the tongue. And he says, you are right, let us be masters of our tongue. And so it kind of goes back hand in hand with what Emmett Fox was telling us about our outer manifestations, the things outside of us, let us be master over them. And so we can think of, what we say is that thing outside of us. If we look at our spirit as our essence, our being within. What a cute little boy. Okay. So I think this is beautiful by Martin Luther King Jr. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And I think that is a really big truth when we contemplate that a little bit. And let's see, I think there's still some more. So blessed are meek, for they will inherit the earth. And that is the end. So I think just to end, we should think of meek being synonymous with patience. However, meekness also includes quiet, gentle, submissive. And that's kind of what we see in the if you look, like, Google it, that's what you're going to see as a general definition. But I kind of like the definition that Emmett Fox gives us, that it's an attitude of the heart whereby a person is willing to accept and submit without resistance to the will and desire of God. So it's like taking that higher road. And I like the idea that it is really an attitude. It is a way of behaving. So I think it really goes hand in hand with what in the study we were talking about last night about Jesus sending his disciples, also the sheep, out to the wolves, because yes, they need to be gentle and kind, but on the other hand, they need to be aware of what they are coming up against and to understand what is the mind of the people that are around them, because just, the saying, they're sheep in they're wolves in sheepskin or whatever. So to really know the heart of people and not to judge them, but, being meek does not mean being foolish. Okay. So, or being naive. So it is using our discernment, because that's God-given, to use our reason and logic, our experience, and to read the writing on the wall. And just as Jesus did in that story, which I think was so beautiful, he exemplified that when Judas, not understanding what, Jesus was talking a lot about, the kingdom, was still thinking this kingdom on earth and how they needed to raise money to build this kingdom. Jesus did not criticize Judas. He didn't make fun of him. He didn't patronize or condescend him. He was very open in receiving his request. And, I think this is how Jesus was effective, because he didn't turn people off. Just like, Gina, you were talking about with your niece, you said what you needed to say firmly, and, as kindly as possible, because it wasn't news she was really excited to hear. But, it's not like she's now never talking to you again, like you said, you kind of said it and you moved on, and she heard it and you knew it. And that was it. So I think that concludes this study on meekness. I don't know if people want to share. I can stop sharing.
I thought it was great. Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
The tongue thing was many times I mauled over that tongue, the good and the bad of the tongue. It can go both ways. Oh my gosh. But I haven't finished reading my book, but I really want to.
It's interesting, the symbolism he puts together. I would have never thought of meek and the earth meaning that, but it made a lot of sense to me. I think as a spiritist and, just reading all the books we read, I really feel like Jesus is giving us the answer. If you want to be here when the world regenerates, you got to get meek. I really feel like, and this is, it's just, this is because this is the way of harmony. And
Evolution. Yep, absolutely.
because we, in order to have unity, harmony needs to prevail first. So, and the only way to get to harmony is through nonviolence. And so meekness does it. And so I think we just really have to start to understand, just like so many things, love is not the strong, passionate feeling, love encompasses a whole lot more. And so I think the same with meekness.
Yeah, in the spiritual world, love isn't how much you can kiss me and hold me. It's not that romantic, emotional vibration that we are grown up on. We have this vision of the utopian lifestyle, which is, and and you have to learn on your own that no such thing exists. The fairy tales are not real on this planet.
Right. So, well, thank you. I think that was, like I said, I always feel the one that studies and presents needs it the most. So
Kind of agree with you.
yeah, and I'm coming definitely from a sharp tongue. I've had to transform that.
You're on mute, Mark.
Just tame it, Teresa, that's all.
Of course I am, and trying to figure out how to do this. Okay. It was interesting. You used 2 or 3 words right off the bat, and I immediately thought of this diagram. So you were talking about neutrality, acceptance, love. And notice how much higher they are and away from all these other things that get in the way. But we know that already. Just again, your use of terms immediately brought that to mind.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that's what they were saying to us about when we're more educated and as we keep progressing, we're going to be working in that higher place, and we're not going to be affected by, these lower vibrations.
Yeah, I mean, it literally, it's a conscious effort on my part to try to remember that diagram.
Yeah, and neutrality is important. We should study that more, because neutrality is a lot about, non-judgment, and it's coming out of duality. So it's coming into acceptance and letting go and coming into truth, because you let go of conflict when you come out of duality. So, anyway,
I get to practice my neutrality every time I go to a community meeting, because I'm listening to these young guys, younger than I am, at least by 20 years. I ain't gonna go no further. But I'm listening to their stories, and some of them have committed murder.
Mm,
Some have attempted murder. Some are drug dealers, and so on and so on. But it's a real different experience being in the thick of it, hearing it, as opposed to being this textbook read scenario.
mhm.
And I love being there because I get to hear, and these are true human beings. They have heart, they have vision. I mean, everything we display, they have there too. You know, it comes out differently, but they're heading in the same direction. God is amazing. I mean, they say amazing things that we say in our presentations and everything, just different. And it's different because of the level of education. But the meaning and the concept is the same.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I just love it.
Well said.
And
Yeah, it reminds me of that, you know, it is for everybody, that there's no like, you got to get to this level or that level, that the information is available for everybody, but just by what you're saying, because it's on all different levels. You just have to look for it and
we
reach
are
out for
all
it.
God's children, 100%. That's all I can say about the whole thing. 100% God's children. Their prayers, they got all these ministers in there that pray and they're trying to help them. And then they have all the young, the ones who did go through all the bad trouble, trying to change their outlook on the young, you know, because they idolize them because of what they did. So now they get to see a different vision and a change in their mindset, and they want these young people to take on that same change. It's fascinating, you know. It's really good. Everybody's moving, that's for sure. Everybody's learning and moving.
Sounds like they are real disciples.
These badasses still slinging drugs? No, these.
Well, they're
Yeah, but
trying to
they're
change.
doing
That's why they
good.
show up.
But they are in their own way, you know, in their own, in the light of these children, they are, you know, and it's really a blessing. It's a blessing to be there. I'm grateful to be there.
Well, you know, this is the thing they pointed out about Moses too. They said, look, as great as a man as he was, he had a lot of faults. So same thing, you know, when you're talking about these guys, they have a lot, but they have a lot of faults, right? You said they're still doing drugs or whatever, but they are doing a lot of good. And I think that's the thing we should look at instead
They're
of.
working their way out of it. That's the whole, that's the ticket. They're working.
But
their
aren't
way
we
out of
all?
it. And look, I'm saying guys, but there's girls in there too. You know, because here's a scenario. One of them says, well, it'll take too long. We'll do it another time. Maybe I'll put it in a presentation. Who knows?
Teresa,
Yeah.
you're absolutely spot on Moses living to be 120. Did you also know that he was 80 when he met God and approached Pharaoh and led his people out of Egypt?
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
80.
I didn't know he was 80, but they said that and that was part of the thing why he was meek, because he was able to overcome like age, that
Yeah.
he stayed like in a younger body, even though he was older. Yeah.
And somebody also said one of his sons was Methuselah, or maybe grandson. So
Probably grandson,
he had the gene.
because Methuselah is the one that lived to be like 600 years old or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the girl at work, she's named after Methuselah, but we call her Mitch, but her name
Oh
is.
my gosh.
Because once in a while I call her Methuselah.
Wow, how's she like that name?
There's a woman. She's a Filipino.
Yeah, but you know, I just like my cousin name was Hercules, and our auntie name was Hercules, who would go after me if you called her Hercules. She thought it was me that called her Hercules when it was another cousin that called her Hercules, but she after my ass because she thought it was me. I'm like,
Oh,
he
that's
did not
funny.
like that name.
run after your mom.
I'm sorry, I would not mess with Hercules no matter who it is.
So one thing I don't think I mentioned was, when they were talking about, when to be silent. And really, according to the gospel, I think it's chapter 10, and item 20. It really says that we should never, point out another's mistakes. And the only time we should is if it's going to hurt others.
Oh, you mean to stop
And-
them. Mhm.
And the only other time is to help to like educate ourselves, like, so we can better understand what we can avoid, to learn from someone else's mistakes or bad points, whatever. So I think that's good to bear in mind, because we really come with this agenda of we need to change each other, and that doesn't work. That's kind of an old belief. Yeah,
You can never change anybody else.
exactly. Yep.
It doesn't
exactly.
exist.
No.
I don't care if you're a psychiatrist.
But we try it over and over. I mean, why do we say the things we say? Because we think
There's a lot of reasons why, Teresa.
yeah, there is. But at the end of the day, well, then why would we say it if we,
Well, because it did something, obviously because it did something for the person who said it. For whatever reason it is, whatever intention there is behind it, there's an intention behind it, good or bad.
Well, I'm not sure if we're talking about the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
what-
we are. We are.
So you're
Well-
saying, I'm sorry, I'm not following you. So I don't, yeah. So you're saying if someone feels like they need to correct someone, that,
There's an intention behind it, whether it be good or bad.
oh, yeah, yes, I would agree, definitely. And most often, I think it's because deep down, we still think that, we can change somebody, we can set them straight, we can put them right.
Unless it's
Well,
your
we
kids.
hope to. It doesn't always work like that.
No, but I want to
How
say,
about
Gina, you
Kalia?
have this pink ray behind you. It's a ray of
Oh,
light.
yeah. Yeah, I see it.
Yes,
My
yeah.
goodness.
Mhm. Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. So I don't know who is, what the topic is for next week, but there will be one, right?
So
Lesson
that'll
5.
be me next week.
Hmm.
I forgot to. Let me see, what's the name of it? I think it's because she changed it on me. It was one, and then frugality and temperance.
Oh.
Frugality and temperance.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I hope to see everybody next week. Well, let's do our closing prayer. If we have a volunteer, if not, I'll do it.